I can be heard clearly.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Your voice is clear, sir.
Okay. So can you see the slide? Can you see the slide?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can
Sadip,
see.
can you see the slide?
Yes, sir. We can see the slide, sir.
Okay. So, in the last lecture, we had discussed two aspects of the state first, that is the autonomy view about the state within Marxist theory, and also we discussed the ideological state apparatus following more of Althuism. We then started our discussion of what I think is at the core of Marxism. This, I believe, is what Marxism is really all about. It builds its theories with the view to emancipation. Now, what is this emancipation? We were discussing about it. We had said that the ultimate aim of Marxism is to free humanity from all bondages, that is, all exploitation and oppression or repression, whatever you call it. Now, exploitation and oppression, these are not the same things. This came up in the course of a discussion in the last lecture, that, for example, patriarchy is an oppression. Now, this patriarchy may be used for exploiting surplus from the female working in the household sector, but it may not always result in exploitation of surplus. So this is an example of an oppression without exploitation. There can be various other examples of oppression without exploitation. For example, the student who is barred from asking questions in class. That very frequently happens as students. Sometimes having been students, we all know that there are teachers who do not allow the. Now that is an oppression. That is you use your position. Now that again does not generate any surplus for the teacher. We had also argued that this ultimate goal, that is human emancipation from all bondages and oppressions, will forever remain an end that Marxists strive for, but is ever unattainable, as this would mean the end of culture. Because we had discussed a quotation from Marx where he says that the object becomes transparent, and at the moment of human emancipation, there is no state, etc., etc. So this is not a possibility, actually. This is a potential towards which we may strive. This may describe a path, but this cannot be attained, because man is destined. Man is defined by the fact that man understands cognizes through culture, through cognitive science systems, for example, language. So there cannot be, the subject and the object will always remain separated. Reality and its assimilation into the mind, that will always remain separate. So this goal of human emancipation, where everything becomes transparent, because there is no oppression, or there is no and there is no exploitation, this would remain forever unfulfilled. But it is an object towards which Marxists will strive. We had also proposed that just as everyone else, Marx remained a prisoner of his times, in the sense that the repressions that he could identify were those that were recognizable within his cultural milieu. Now, Marx, contrary to what some of his followers would make him, is no omniscient person. Marx was a product of his culture, and we will see that there were areas of repression which he not only did not recognize, but in fact, he uh, was taking a position on the side of the repressor in certain cases. He concentrated on two kinds of partial emancipations, political and economic. That is, the total human emancipation he talks about, but he was mainly focused on economic emancipation, and he also talks of political emancipation. His focus remained concentrated on economic emancipation, and therefore his chosen entry point into societal analysis is class, which we have defined as designating groups which are connected by the processes of production, appropriation, distribution, and receipt of surplus. We started our elaboration of political emancipation. Today, we will take forward our reading of the specifics and problems of Marx's notion of emancipation. And I hope that we will be able to end our discussion on emancipation today. Uh, Political emancipation, we are continuing with our discussion of political emancipation. We had discussed the initial part. In his time in Europe, where feudalism had ended, discrimination by religion was the dominant form of exclusion by state. We look at Marx's views on political emancipation as they are presented in On the Jewish Question. Now, by political emancipation, what Marx meant, as we had discussed, is that the state no longer discriminates. State, which is the political authority, no longer discriminates amongst its citizens on the basis of any identity. He was speaking specifically, he was referring to one kind of identity, as religious identity, because that formed the basis of states' exclusions, discrimination in Europe, particularly its exclusion of the Jewish peoples. So, by political emancipation was meant generally that the state should look upon all its citizens equally, and particularly he was talking of the need to get over discrimination on the basis of religion, particularly the Jewish religion. Marx graded some Western states in an ascending order of political emancipation, by which he meant citizens' freedom from state discrimination based on religion, specifically Judaism. He placed in an ascending order Germany was at the bottom, then there was France, and at the highest level there were some American states. This is from Marx himself, some American states. The last being totally politically emancipated in his sense. Hence, in these states, the question of human emancipation versus political emancipation could be posed properly, because political emancipation had taken place in some American states. So Marx said that is, they no longer discriminate. You see, American states, each the different states still have a lot of differences in their laws, and at that point of time, these were even more pronounced. So some of the American states did not discriminate between citizens on the basis of religion. So he says that there was political emancipation, and so within those states, one could see what was the limitations of political emancipation as opposed to human emancipation. Now, this is a quotation from On the Jewish Question. The political elevation of man above religion shares all the defects and all the advantages of political elevation in general. The state, as a state, annuls, for instance, private property. Man declares by political means that private property is abolished as soon as the property qualification for the right to elect or to be elected is abolished, as has occurred in many states of North America. So, what he's saying here, that the state, taking one instance, that is discrimination on the basis of, we are talking of discrimination on the basis of religion, but Marx is also talking of discrimination on the basis of property, that is the right to vote in most of the Western states was restricted on the basis, first in the case of Germany, on the basis of religion, of course, but also on the basis of the amount of property that you held. We refer to interesting confrontation that occurred after Cromwell's parliamentary party in Britain captured power by removing the monarch around 1640. We had seen that this is discussed by E.P. Thompson in the making of the English working class. We had discussed that after the parliamentary party had defeated the monarchists, within the parliamentary party, the levelers, that was a group of people who wanted to level everybody to the same status. The levelers went to General Ireton, who was the general of the parliamentary party, and said that now the Commonwealth has been established, so we should all have the right to vote. And General Ireton replied that no, see, unless you own a part of the land of Britain, you cannot be deemed to be interested in the well-being of Britain. So you cannot be allowed to vote if you do not own land. So there was discrimination. The right to vote was restricted to those who owned a certain amount of property. So in the North American states, it abolish this limitation on the right to vote. And so it said that since the right to vote has the amount of private property ownership was not a qualification for the right to vote, it then says that hence private property is abolished because private property qualification for right to elect has been abolished. So this Marx says that this is a myth, this is a falsehood, this is a misconception, because this political emancipation just pushes the private property right and its privileges from the level of the state, from the discrimination by the state to the civil society, where the right to private property is used to extract surplus value, as we had discussed. The bondage of religion remains in civil society also because human alienation, which is its root, still exists. The bondage of religion remains in civil society because human alienation, which is its root, still exists. You see, because we had discussed this in the context of the thesis on Feuerbach, that Marx criticizes Feuerbach for terminating his discussion on the basis of religion to religious fetish. That is, man projects his own goodness into the clouds, and the earthly family is projected, the best of the earthly family is projected in the clouds to make the heavenly family, the holy family. Marx says that no, we must go further and see that this projection and this fetish is created because of alienation. In the first place, because within the earthly family there is exploitation and therefore alienation. Man is alienated from the society, and in order to get over this feeling of not being a part of the community, of being left out, of being a surplus producer while some are surplus appropriators, because of this he tries to get over this by creating a fetish, by creating a religion. This gives him solace. So the bondage of religion remains in civil society because human alienation, which is its root, still exists. Religious fetish acts as an instrument of class domination. So religion remains. You just because you say that because the political state says that it on the basis of religion it will not discriminate, that all with whatever faith you profess, you are equal in the eyes of the state. It will not detract from your right to vote or any other right that the state bestows on its citizen. So then the state says that, well, now religion, the problem of religion has been abolished. Now Marx says that no, that following Marx we can say that that is not so, because The roots of religious alienation, religious fetish, is human alienation which continues to exist in civil society, that is outside the state. And this religious fetish can be used as an instrument of class domination, as is very apparently occurring in various countries in the world, including our own country. In the West, in the Islamic countries, in our country, this is now becoming an instrument of class domination. You see, crony capital, the Adanis and the Ambanis, for example, they are growing at a much faster pace than the rest of the capitalists. Now, they for crony capital to be able to dominate, to be able to make good of the state's largesse, state's benefits, it is because then the state has to be the basis of the state's power has to be something other than economic, because by promoting crony capital, economic growth is stunted, and you have more and more of unemployment and jobless growth, etc. But this does not deter people from supporting the existing regime because of the religious fetish. Religious discrimination can always be activated to annul even political freedom. Form of fascism can be activated. Private property-based class exploitation remains in society. In fact, it gains in stability and acceptability. So, you see, though political emancipation has occurred, there is no discrimination on the basis of private property, no discrimination to the right to vote. Yet, private property continues to play its role in discriminating between the haves and have-nots by being the basis of the power to extract surplus value. Religious discrimination has been abolished at the level of the state. All religions, it is secular. Everyone has the right to vote, whatever religion you profess. But religion still remains, and religion can always be activated to support various kinds of fascist states. So religion remains because the root of religion in alienation, man's alienation, class, because of class domination, that remains. So political emancipation, that is, the state de-recognizes all discriminations. It doesn't recognize discrimination. It doesn't discriminate between people regarding the right to vote. Everyone has the right to vote, adult suffrage. Everyone has the right to vote irrespective of the religion. But the roots of the private property still continues to be the root of exploitation. Religion still continues to be a means of class domination. When political emancipation has been autonomously carried to its limit through the secular state, that is, there is no discrimination on the basis of religion, based on unrestricted suffrage, that is, there is no discrimination on the basis of property ownership, the material deformities exist with all force in civil society. So this is the exposing the myth of political emancipation. Marx exposes the myth of political emancipation, that political emancipation does not mean that you're emancipated from religious exploitation. You're emancipated from exploitation through private property. Political emancipation also embeds its own mythology, which corresponds to the mythology of capital. This is the mythology of liberty, equality, and fraternity that liberalism promotes. Marx's critique of the equation of political emancipation with human emancipation is a strong critique of liberalism. Now, this is a long quote from On the Jewish Question. The establishment of the political state, as opposed to this is in my insertion, as opposed to the feudal or religious state, and the dissolution of civil society into independent individuals whose relations with one another depend on law, just as the relations of men in the system of estates and guilds dependent on privilege, that is in the feudal system, dependent on privilege, is accomplished by one and the same act. The political state is established, that is basically the bourgeois state, and the civil society, that is the society where people interact not through the agency of the government. Now, within this civil society, this is very strongly demarcated in Gramsci. We'll come to this much later. The difference between political society and civil society. This political society consists of the organs of the state, like the judiciary, the police, uh, the executive, etc. And the civil society consists of, uh, mm, say, schools, hospitals, uh, various places where human beings we interact without the intervention of the state apparatus. Now, this this civil society areas, the civil society organs themselves also interact, also perpetuates dominance, class dominance, as we discussed in discussing ideological state apparatus. But once the dissolution of civil society into independent, previously there were the peasants, there were the artisans, etc., etc. There were the aristocrats. Now, all these systems of estates and guilds, which had privileges granted by the political state, by the monarch. Now, this has been abolished, so the society is dissolved into apparently independent individuals. It is established, so the establishment of the political state meaning the bourgeois state, and the breaking up of society into independent individuals. This is accomplished by one and the same act. Man as a member of civil society, unpolitical, that is indistinguishable state by state, man as a member of civil society, unpolitical man, inevitably appears, however, as the natural man. The rights of man appears as natural rights because conscious activity is concentrated on the political act, on dissolving political privileges. So once these political privileges have been dissolved, we tend to think that, well, now man has become the natural man, man of nature. There's no cultural discriminations. Egoistic man is the passive result of the dissolved society, a result that is simply found in existence, an object of immediate certainty, therefore a natural object. So you see that, well, all those things which differentiated man from man, the estates, the religions, etc., these have been dissolved. So there.
Sir, your voice is breaking.
Subjecting them to
Sir, your
criticism. That
voice
is,
was breaking, sir.
my voice is breaking.
Yeah, just a little. It was fine. Just in the previous sentence, it didn't come.
You see, tell me, but I think this problem. Can you hear me now properly?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now it is clear.
Yeah. Now, we were saying that the political revolution, that is the revolution which dissolves the discriminating feudal state and establishes the political state, as Marx calls it, the emancipated political state or the bourgeois state. The political revolution resolves civil life into its component parts without revolutionizing these components themselves or subjecting them to criticism. That is, you take it as natural. You take individuals standing apart from each other as natural. So you don't have to go beyond the what is natural. It's not because what is cultural, what is discriminated culturally. You try to examine what is the reason for it. But if it is natural, which is given in nature, then you don't have to go beyond it. So, as a pre, mm, it regards civil society, the world of needs, labor, private interests, civil law, as the basis of its existence, as a precondition, not requiring further substantiation, and therefore, as its natural base, not requiring further substantiation. That is, you don't delve further into this. Why? How is this world of needs? Where does it come from? Where does private interest come from? Why do we need civil law? We don't ask these questions because they seem to be the preconditions for this natural man. Unless we have these, we cannot have the natural man, the individual man. Finally, man as a member of civil society is held to be man in his sensuous, individual, immediate existence, whereas political man is only abstract, artificial man as an allegorical, juridical person. So, man in civil society, as we see everyone interacting in the market, interacting mainly talks the market, interacting in the market, interacting in the educational institution, or whatever. Finally, man as a member of civil society is held to be man in his sensuous, individual, immediate existence, whereas political man, that is the citizen, is only abstract, artificial man, that is the man who is built into the constitution, as an allegorical juridical person. The real man is recognized only in the shape of the egoistic individual. The true man is recognized only in the shape of the abstract citizen. Now, this word true, this is something which is taken over from, which is a Hegelian thing. True man, truth is as necessity. So, you need this legal framework, you need the judicial framework. Why? Because these egotistic men, if they left to themselves, there would be chaos, as Hegel says. So so you need the legal system, which then creates a fiction of the citizen, the abstract citizen, and this is the true man. Why? Because this is necessary in order to maintain societies. So we feel that once this political emancipation has been achieved, it is as if we can see natural man, and this natural man is mirrored in what is the true man, the abstract citizen, because the state is necessary only to maintain law and order, in order to maintain the cohesion between these individuals who are otherwise disintegrated. So Marx is saying that this is how it appears, but this is not really so, because the discriminations by the state have now been passed on to the civil society, as we discussed in our last slide. That, for example, discrimination on the basis of ownership of private property, that has now been abolished. But ownership of private property within civil society, it entails one to the power to extract surplus value. Discrimination on the basis of religion has been abolished. So you have as if discrimination on the basis of the estates, peasants, etc., guilds, etc., all these have been abolished. So you feel as if man is now free from all discriminations. But no, the basis of the fetish of religion, for example, is still there, because man feels alienation, and from alienation, this alienation breeds the need to construct communities which are then act as fetish, and religion is one of them. Now, then, is political emancipation unimportant? If Marx is so critical of political emancipation, there is a charge against Marx that he devalued all partial freedoms and attempts to attain such emancipation. This is not a valid criticism. Now, again, from on the Jewish question, political emancipation is, of course, a big step. True, it is not the final form of human emancipation in general, but it is the final form of human emancipation within the hitherto existing world order. It goes without saying that we are here we are speaking here of real practical emancipation, real practical political emancipation. That is, it is the final form of human emancipation in general within the hitherto existing world. Hitherto existing world order marked by class division. As long as world order is marked by class division, the best possible emancipation is that provided by the secular democratic state, which Marx calls the ascension to this. Marx calls political emancipation, where the state does not discriminate between its citizens on the basis of identity, whether it be identity based on ownership of private property, or it be identity based on race, or it be identity based on religion. Marx, in his inaugural address to the International Working Men's Association in 1864, says the 10 Hours Bill was not only a great practical success, it was the victory of a principle. It was the first time that in broad daylight, the political economy of the middle class succumbed to the political economy of the working class. So, Marx is not against partial emancipations. He is for political emancipation, the secular democratic state. He is for laws like the 10 Hours Bill. Again, from on the Jewish question, it makes a great difference whether the complete state after political emancipation, because of the defect inherent in the general nature of the state, counts religion among its presuppositions, or whether the incomplete state, because of the defect inherent in its particular existence as a defective state, declares that religion is its basis. So, on the one hand, you have the secular democratic state, which counts religion among its presuppositions. It counts religion among its presuppositions. That is, religion is there. This is natural. So you will have Islam, you will have Hinduism, you will have Christianity, Judaism, etc., etc. So this is among its presuppositions. Or you have the incomplete state, like we are heading towards in our country, towards the Hindu Rashtra, where incomplete state, because of the defect inherent in its particular existence as a defective state, declares that religion is its basis. So then this is no longer a complete state by politically emancipated, but it is incomplete and takes religion as its basis, whether you have the Islamic states, you have the Hindutva based states, etc. In the latter case, religion becomes imperfect politics. This is what he says. In the latter case, that is where religion is its basis. Religion becomes imperfect politics. This is, you see, clearly the last statement comprehends Hindutva and the Islamic State, Taliban, etc., etc. See how well he had comprehended the problem. Religion becomes imperfect politics, where religion is the basis of the state. Some Marxists insist that the only concern of Marxists should be human emancipation. This is a form of infantile leftist disorder that Lenin later condemned in left-wing communism and infantile disorder. Now, when human essence, who is to establish, who is to embody, who embodies the human essence, who will fight for this human essence, who is a natural proponent of human essence. Human emancipation as destiny, encapsulated in the idea of communism, is an idealist reading of Marx, though it can be sustained with quotes from Marx. Now, as we had said, that see, there is no true Marxism. There can be various interpretations of Marx, and these various interpretations can all be sustained by quotations from Marx. Now, we are using a particular interpretation of Marx, which is not an idealist interpretation. This is flowing from the thesis on Feuerbach, where he distinguishes his own philosophy from the mechanical materialism of Feuerbach and from the idealism of Hegel. And he says that between idea and reality, the bridge is practice. So there will be continuous flow to and fro movement between reality and thought, and both will be changing in the process. And this flow, the what is the bridge through which this flow will take place? The bridge is that of practice. So this is a particular uh, reading, but there is also reading that human emancipation is the destiny, that it must occur, that the societies will move through certain stages and human emancipation must occur in the communist society. Now, this is an idealist reading which creates a linear historical journey. Now, this idealistic reading, apart from the fact that it contradicts Marxian philosophy, is itself is contrary to political practice. It constantly impedes political practice, because if it is destiny, then political practice is reduced to a secondary role. This reading claims that societies evolve through increasing simplification of class relations till the classless end of history is reached. In the immediately preceding stage, capitalism, there are only two classes, capitalist and worker. The working class is destined to lead the revolutionary transition to communism because it seeks emancipation of humanity or society from private ownership of all productive resources. It does not seek emancipation from this or that type of bondage of previous orders have been abolished by the political emancipation of the state. It seeks emancipation from what it perceives as the last remaining source of power, power to extract surplus labor as surplus value, whose source is private ownership of property. So, because the working class is already dispossessed of all property other than its own labor power, which sources profit of the capitalist, it knows from its daily life practices that the power of exploitation lies in private property right. In this sense, it embodies the universal human essence. So it is not, the working class is not fighting for its own benefit. It is fighting for the establishment of the human essence. This is what this idealistic reading says. Why? How does it embody the human essence? Because there is only one last emancipation that is left, and the working class realizes that this emancipation is necessary. Because why? Because it has been dispossessed of the means of production other than its power to labor, and because of this dispossession, it sees in its daily work that it is producing for others who own these means of production of which it has been disposed. It is producing from them. The labor power that it is selling becomes alien to him, opposes him as capital, him or her as capital. So the working class, in its daily productive activity, becomes aware of this last vestige of domination, and so it wants to overthrow this, and so it embodies human essence, the a total human emancipation, which is impeded by the private property right. But workers, but then there is another reading, which is also in part. This is a continuation of the idealist reading, but it appears to modify it, to make, to superficially at least, to make it more realistic. But workers have own particular interests in mind. Workers in the, say, the state sector, their interests will be quite different from those workers in the private sector. The casual workers would be different from their interests would be different from the permanent workers. But workers have own particular interests. In fact, class fragments are more interested in their sectional interests, wage hike, better work conditions, etc. In this situation, the gap between the existing working class consciousness, particular knowledge of class in itself, and the potential political consciousness of its role human emancipation, universal knowledge of class for itself, is to be breached through education by the vanguard party. Now, this is the modification that is introduced into the idealist reading of the stages of history leading to communism. Whereas it is some would say that the human essence is embodied in the working class, so they fight for human emancipation naturally. But others would say that no, the working class in its daily experience fights for its own fragmentary interests only. So this is what they call the class in itself. It knows that the capital is opposed to it, but it is not. The opposition is in terms of you are denying better working conditions, you are denying higher wages, etc. So this is what they gain from in that say trade union through their trade union practices, and but they have the potential to have the political consciousness of their role in human emancipation. That is the universal knowledge of class for itself. That is the knowledge that if we overthrow capitalism, not just fight for wage hike, not just fight for better working conditions. If we overthrow this political system, this private property right on which this capitalist domination rests, if we can overthrow this system, then there will be human emancipation, because this is a last basis, pillar of uh, exploitation, of oppression. So, in their daily practice, they become conscious of their opposition with capital and they think of economic gains. But they are not yet conscious of their, as a class for itself, class in itself, conscious of its own particular interests, better wages, better working conditions. Class for itself, conscious of its universal role of human emancipation. And how is this to be bridged? Through education by the vanguard party. The duality of class in itself and class for itself has been developed by the proponents of dialectical materialism, where we had referred to this term previously, has been developed by the proponents of diamat reading of Marx, most prominently Lukács and Cohen. It is the fundamental theoretical pillar on which the generally unquestioned authority of the Communist Party leadership over its cadre rests. That is, to transcend from class in itself to class for itself. This requires the mediation of the Communist Party, and this gives a vital role to the leadership, and the cadre and the leader are therefore separated. It is true that the definition of class in the overdetermined reading of neo-Althusserians, which we have adopted, process of surplus production, appropriation, distribution, receipt, is a structural definition that when it can be treated as consonant with the class in itself definition of dialectical materialism. See, the class in itself definition is a structural definition that the working people, those who are producing surplus value, this is the same as the Althusserian definition, where class is defined as a process of production, appropriation, distribution, and receipt of surplus value, surplus. But the new Althusserian it is an entry into analysis. It is not to be confused with a really existent group of people who are in the process of gaining in consciousness guided by the knowledgeable party leadership. No, why? Because as we have said, overdetermination, subjectivity, our consciousness is determined by so many things which pull and push us in various directions: religion, linguistic group, caste, whatever, together with class. So, yes, because of Marx's focus on exploitation, class process becomes a point of entry into analysis. But this does not mean that real individuals, their subjectivity, their thinking process, it is determined by their class position. It is overdetermined by various points. This is the difference between the new Arthosian approach and the overdetermination approach and this dialectical materialism approach. Though both define class through as a process of surplus production and appropriation. The distinction between class in itself and class for itself, however, is not sustainable with reference to Marx or Engels. There are only two texts that are quoted in support, and neither of them refer to the couple unambiguously, that is, class in itself and class for itself. Now, this is from the 18th Brumaire. This is a much used to define the difference between class in itself and class for itself. Insofar as millions of families live under economic conditions of existence that separate their mode of life, their interests, and their culture from those of the other classes and put them in hostile opposition to the latter, they form a class. Insofar as there is merely a local interconnection among the smallholding peasants and the identity of their interests begets no community, no national bond, and no political organization among them, they do not form a class. So, this is taken to imply that if they are segregated, here Marx is they do not bond between the various segments of the peasantry, do not bond. They are only locally interested. In that case, the class itself and class for itself theorists say that class for itself. Why do they say this? This is to circumvent the problem of Marx's statement that says that in one sense peasants form a class, in another they do not. So, you see, in one sense, they are saying that Marx is saying that insofar as they are merely local interconnection, insofar as there is merely local interconnection among these smallholding peasants, and the identity of the interests begets no community, no national interest, and no political organization among them, they do not form a class. So, under this class. Now, to overcome this problem of Marx's statement that in one sense peasants form a class and in another they do not, class for itself,
Pranab,
that is those who have
Pranab,
land.
we lost you for some. At least I couldn't hear you for 20 seconds in between. So it's getting disturbed.
This slide
No, yeah.
from the beginning.
No, not
Beginning
from
of this.
at several points for 10 seconds or 20 seconds. Your voice is not there. It is happening repeatedly. But anyway, we can get the main message.
The slide can be seen. Can this
Yes.
be
We are getting the main message.
next lecture I will skip because in this case what we'll have I'll get back to
But the connection at your end is weak.
Yes, sir. Actually, in between for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, it is not coming, but some of the times it is clear, some of the times it is getting
yeah, but
broken by,
yeah, I realize okay, but
yes.
I can't do anything really about it. I'll end it fast. I'll not go too much further, but this part I will have to end before closing the lecture.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
itself, this distinction cannot really be attributed to Marx. This is there. It is attributed.
Pranabda, it's a problem. I mean, your voice is not audible now. Sir, are you there?
Not from our class. Yes, hello.
Sir, your voice was not audible again for 30-45 seconds. So, if there is any place near you where the connectivity is a little better, you can shift a little.
Because it's happening very frequently now.
Now, yeah. Earlier it was happening only once or twice after 5-10 minutes, but now it happened a little frequently. And the slides are also not showing right now.
Lecture that way.
Slides are also not showing right now. Shift a little where.
So slides I have not.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. So shift a little where the connectivity is better.
I'm sorry, but we'll take it up to this point if there are questions. Kolkata for some while. And so next lecture, next Friday, I will not.
Sir, these things also
Will
we are
persist,
unable to
so
hear. I
I'll
mean,
be
whatever you spoke, only we heard of the word Kolkata and next week. Other than that, we couldn't hear anything.
So next week, I don't think there will be. I will not take a lecture because
Okay, sir.
this problem will persist. So only when I get back to Kolkata, that is on Sunday next.
Okay.
Next Sunday. After that, it will resume. So one lecture I will miss. Can I be heard?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This was audible completely. So one lecture
so
will be
if
missed,
the-
and then you will reach Kolkata, and then the lectures will start.
So if there are questions as far as this part was concerned, which is not much, we couldn't cover much ground. But I will try to take it if you can hear me.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Now it is audible. Anyone having question can ask.
Or should I repeat this thing in the next lecture?
Sir, it was audible. We got the message, so you can just recap it a little, and then start.
So, shall I end it here? Are there questions?
Anyone having question?
But anyway, even the questions the answers will probably not be.
Yeah, if there will be again problems.
So I'm sorry, I am ending the lecture early and I have covered very little ground, and I will not be delivering a lecture next Friday. Then I'll take over on the Friday after that.
Okay, sir.
I'm assuming that there are no questions just now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. No one has asked, and there is no question in the chat box also. So I think we can end here, and then we will resume the sessions. when
Okay,
we will-
sorry and good night. Sorry
Yes,
and good
yes,
night.
yes, okay, sir. Thank you, sir.